Okay, welcome folks to the Leading DEI Conversations in the Workplace Info Session. Super excited to have you here. We're going to be together for about an hour today, so you'll hear from various people today about the program. You'll get to meet the instructors, so many great things on our agenda. But before we do that, we want to share a little bit about who we are. So I'm going to go ahead and pass the mic over to Akiana.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us this evening. My name is Akiana. I use she, her, hers pronouns. I'm the public programs manager here within SGO, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a little bit. But first, I really just wanted to talk about who SGO is in case some of you are new to our community. So SGO's mission is to abolish inequity in the workplace, and we achieve this through a holistic approach to fostering diversity, equity, and inclusion at work and beyond. And I do want to acknowledge that SGO was originally founded on land that is traditional territory of the Massachusetts and Pawtucket tribes. And I myself am also a resident of Massachusetts, and I'm also living on native Agawam land as well. And just a little bit more about me and my role as public programs manager here within SGO. I really manage all of the programs that cater to our community. So we have two different sides of our SGO company. We have our corporate training and DEI facilitation, and then we also have our public programming and community. So you might have heard, if you haven't already, you might have heard of our new platform, Mighty Networks, and our Rise Together community. More to know about that, but that is an overview of my role on SGO. And Fatima, I'll kick it back to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. All right. So again, my name is Fatima Denke. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'm currently the DEI programs and training manager at SGO. I've been kicking it with the SGO company for about 3 years now. I'm currently calling in from the original traditional homelands of the Piscataway people, which is now known as Waldorf, Maryland. And so other identities that I'd like to honor in this space, I identify as a Black woman. I come from West African heritage. And a Muslim background. And some of that really shapes my interest in doing this work because of my experiences. So I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Kai.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kaya Rivera. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm one of the SGO facilitators leading DEI conversations with you all. We're really excited to be here with you. It's raining here in Boston where I'm calling from. Actually, the sun just broke out, so that's a slight lie, but I'm coming here from cozy Boston. And I'm just really excited to be a part of this program with you all. We did it last year, it was over the summer, but really excited to lead this with you, answer your questions, talk about the content, and a little bit about myself. I identify as a queer woman of color, mixed race, and that's how I bring myself into this facilitation and how it's really kind of engaged me in this work and how I move through this work and facilitate this as well. So I'm going to kick it over to Dr. Victoria.
Thanks, Kaya. Hi, everybody. Dr. Victoria Verleza. I use pronouns she and her, and I am the Senior DEI Learning and Engagement Specialist Program Instructor for LDC with Kaya, and very excited to be doing this iteration. Again, we love this program. I come to this work from a variety of backgrounds, but most importantly, I am excited to share space, especially around these topics about how do we have conversations that pertain to who we are in the workplace, because one of the most important things to me is being who I am in all spaces. The identities I bring to the table are I am a white, queer, autistic, lesbian, who is coming into this work from the space of wanting to understand myself and others and create some bridges and help folks meet where others are at, but also how do we have difficult conversations in the workplace, because we know we can't separate the world and our work, right? Like we are who we are in all spaces. And I'm really excited about what Akiana said about smashing the patriarchy with SGO and like talking about all of these really large topics and how we can approach them in our daily work. So thank you for being here. I'm passing it back over to Fatima.
Yeah, sounds fun. We love playing this virtual game. Awesome. Thanks so much, everyone, for the intro. So you'll get to hear more from the instructors, especially for those of you who are interested more about this program and you want to know, like, okay, what is this about? Who are the people? Why should I trust them? That's what we're going to talk about today, right? And in case you're like, give me the agenda because you love a good agenda, we do too. Here it is. So beyond introductions, we're also gonna give both Kaya and Victoria time to just talk about their experience and get a bit deeper, right? So we really appreciate this program because as facilitators who've done this work for many years, we know that it's really important to create a space where folks are able to also trust the people that are going to guide them through this program, right? That's so important. So before I even get into the program overview and we discuss the curriculum, we want to hold space for that first. Then we'll talk about the program, what you'll get, which is probably what you're all really here for and excited about. And then we'll have an opportunity to answer some questions that you might have. We know that we received some questions via Eventbrite. So what we're going to try to do is answer questions live first. And then once we do that, we'll then get into the questions from Eventbrite. So that's the plan. All right. So as Akiana was saying before, first of all, I want to shout out Akiana extra hard, right? Because she just joined our team, but she's really going to be pushing a lot of our programming. And for folks who are new to the SGO community, you know that our programming has changed over time, especially due to the pandemic, right? A lot of our programming and events used to be in person, our trainings used to be in person, and we've had to adjust, right? And do a lot of these workshops virtually. And so doing this work and asking ourselves, how do we make sure that we create a program that still is solid, that is excellent, and that gives the people what they need, even if we're across the screens, right? And so I want to honor the space again and give a shout out to Akiana because you'll get to hear more from her if and when you join this program. And then there's a special guest in the house who's in the background, but that's our awesome co-CEO who usually wears the hat of head of everything, right? But I think it's really important for you all to know that she's here because one, if you have any questions around bringing this program to your company, she's the awesome person to ask. But also two, we are out here modeling to y'all how we co-lead together, right? Like we're literally sharing this program while our co-CEO is here. And so part of that is also why it's important to mention this. All right, so let's get into it. Before both Dr. V and Kaya come back up, I just want to talk a little bit more about the creation of this program and why leading DEI conversations was even a thing for us. And what we noticed over the years where we had people who were signing up for our programs and our trainings, but they kept asking like, what do I say? Or what do I do if someone does fill in the blank, right? How do I hold space for people? What does it mean to facilitate? And it wasn't enough to just do a workshop or a training on unconscious bias, microaggressions, if people didn't really even know how to lead these conversations. And so both Dr. V and Kaya did an amazing job for the first cohort, which was this summer, where we had a group of 20-ish people come together to talk about these things, right? And I wanted to highlight this testimonial here because it really speaks to the space that was created and held. So leading DI conversations was a very valuable course. It provided a safe space to ask questions related to this work, and the facilitator shared tips and tricks on how to handle some of the more difficult challenges that come up. Our cohort established a strong community of support, and I hope those connections will continue to develop even now that the course has ended. I learned a lot of applicable skills, not just related to DEI facilitation, but relevant to my everyday workplace environment. And I think this is important, right? Because even though the course is titled Leading DEI Conversations in the Workplace, everything that you'll learn in this program is definitely transferable, right? So I can keep singing their praises, but I'm going to stop talking and give them an opportunity to share a bit more. So let me stop sharing so we have a bit more of intimate space, and I'll go ahead and do a Q&A style for us. So both Dr. V and Kaya, my first question to y'all is, can you talk a bit more about your background and experience as a DI facilitator? I know you sort of mentioned it in the beginning, but can you give the people a little bit more about like who you are and what does it mean to be doing this work? So Dr. V, if you want to kick us off, go for it.
Oh, I was going to tell Kaya to give the people what they want, but I could start. It's fine. So I sort of fell into facilitation. When I was in my first master's program, I found intergroup dialogue, and I went to UMass Amherst. So shout out to Amherst. I kind of just discovered it. I was an RA, I was in undergrad, and then I was in a student affairs program. And when I went through my intergroup dialogue program, I found something that I was good at and I really loved, and that's facilitating. I really enjoy guiding and moving conversations and having conversations that are sticky or nuanced or complicated, and not being afraid of that. Because I think for a long time, especially growing up as a white woman, I was very fearful of conversations that related to oppression or marginalization or the ways in which that I perpetuated harm. But then once I started embracing it through the IGD program, I really found something that I love, and that like it just kind of feels like home to me. Dialogue specifically, and facilitating is something that I don't think I've ever gotten away from in any position. I teach, I've done workshops, I consult, I do this work on a daily basis. I think facilitating is just something that I've made my home in, and it's sort of become second nature. So to have the space to co-facilitate this program with Kaya has been so rewarding. Kaya, what about you?
I just love everything Dr. V has to say. I apologize if you hear my dog in the background. She apparently sees something very interesting and keeps barking. But I, like Dr. V, fell into facilitating in a student affairs program when I was in grad school and doing a grad assistantship in a social justice resource center. And it was through there, having tough dialogues with students around identity, with faculty and staff, that I really fell in love with this art of facilitating. As someone who is not an extrovert, it was one way I could command a room and be able to talk through some of these sticky things, like Dr. V said, but it was also a place where I could do my own identity work, like work through the icky parts of things I learned as a child when it came to queerness or race or things of that nature, and really just work through those things with other people around and have those light bulb moments. Those are some of my favorite parts of this program, is even as facilitators, not to speak for Dr. V, but I do think we both had moments last summer or this summer where we had sticky parts, and then we were like, oh wow, I learned a new way to talk through this topic, or I learned a new perspective from someone who is participating with us. And that's the part I love the most about facilitating this content and working through this content with people, is because I'm always learning. Even though we're deemed the quote unquote experts in the room, we're always learning and moving together and being able to co-facilitate in that way. So I really love that. And yes, to Akiana's point, Dr. V is the SGO librarian and always has new book recommendations. So that's one of my other favorite parts of co-facilitating with her on that. So learning new things every day. Yeah. Next question, Fatima.
Awesome. Kaya's like, come on, let's keep it rolling. Kaya's on a roll. I love it. Okay, so already, just by an info session alone, you're already getting a book to read. And I'll just say it out loud because I know there are going to be folks watching this recording, The Art of Facilitation by Dell Hunter et al. So if you get this recording, and there'll be a transcript with this recording, you'll get to check that out if you're interested. All right. Thanks so much, y'all, for sharing that. So I want to talk a little bit more about your experience, right? And you've done this program multiple times, not just with our public offering, but with some private clients. How do you foresee this program supporting people in their DEI facilitation? And feel free to mention some of what you saw change and happen in the last cohort.
I can go first. I think for a lot of folks, both in this program and other ways that we've done it, they might be the only person in their role doing this. So it's a space for them to build a community of other people who are thinking about this content and the different ways to talk about it and bring it up at work, and different ideas for different workshops within their own workplace. And it's also a space of learning, right? Coming in as your most vulnerable self and asking some hard questions maybe internally and even externally, and being able to work through those concepts together, I think is really valuable. And the thing I really love the most about this program is that we in real time work through things. People have a question, Dr. V and I will stop and be like, hey, let's talk through this. Does this feel comfortable for you if we talk about this way or that way? Or we provide resources after a session, and there is like post work and things of that nature for people to really be thinking about these things and how they can apply it to their workplace. And that's one of the things I do really enjoy about this workshop. And one of the things I love about SGO is the work isn't just the workshop. We continuously are having conversations around how to do this work better and how to bring things to the workplace and how to keep these conversations going and how to keep this community going. And I know for those who are in this call right now, Mighty Networks is one way to do that. So please join us on Mighty Networks, but also for those watching the recording, please join us on Mighty Networks. That's a great way to keep the conversation going and ask any of these questions. Dr. V, do you have anything to add?
I just really want to double click on two things that you said, the community aspect and building relationships across organization or across fields even. We saw a lot of folks from a lot of different areas, but also some folks who were on team of DEI people, but also some who were just the only person in an office. And the relationships and the quote said it best, but the safe space that people had to talk about, like Kaya said, those real-time issues where we as facilitators could hold the space. And you said it beautifully, we were learning too. It's not about us just sharing the information. Yeah, we have information to share, but also what can we do in the moment to better our own practice? We can role model that or possibility model that. We get to stretch ourselves, but also hold that container for folks. And I think something I saw for folks was not necessarily a change in their facilitation, but an ability to practice how to ask questions or how to voice that they're uncomfortable with something, and how to in real time call each other in when something's been said, or things that we do on a daily basis, right? At work, if something's said that doesn't land well, how do we call someone in versus calling out? We got to actually do those things as a community. And I think that's one of the coolest pieces of the program.
I want to add one thing real quick is we also got to model that behavior in so many ways. There were things that would come up in our cohort that people would be like, hey, these aren't inclusive terms, or these go against our community guidelines that we came up with at the beginning of our time together. Does someone want to address that? So Dr. V and I got to facilitate that conversation and model how to facilitate that when it might come up in their company when they're having these sort of discussions. And it was something we'd always come back to and talk about and say hey, when this thing happened, this is what Victoria and I did to really talk through this situation, or what behavior we modeled for you that you can take those skills back to your company.
Modeling was so important. And we even did it in the moment. We were talking to each other, being transparent while also sharing content, but showing what it means to co-facilitate and how important that can be and how you need that support was something we took really seriously, being transparent while also sharing knowledge and information in space.
I know I've facilitated this program and I've been in this space, but I forget that we are the ones doing this. So I'm oh, where can I sign up? Right. But I appreciate this piece that you're talking about, because oftentimes we call ourselves practitioners rather than experts, like Kaya said, right? And even though they're combined decades of just the knowledge and practice from both Dr. V, Kaya, and those on the SGO team doing this work, we're talking about the practice, right? Perfectionism is something that we don't have no business with, okay? It's not a real thing. And so we do our best to make sure that if that is true, and if that's what we believe in our mission of abolishing inequity, then some of the practices that have been so centered in workplaces, we sort of have to dismantle them to be able to be great facilitators. All right, y'all, my last question for you is, what is your approach and style? Why should folks trust you in leading this program? Hopefully they already get to see your style, but I think, people might be interested, right? Why should they invest in something like this with you all leading this work?
I can go first. I think modeling is so important. So to the point that we talked about before is like naming things. So when something would happen, Dr. V and I would name, hey, like this happened and this is how we facilitated through it. And that transparency, I think, is so important when having these conversations and having them with people who are also going to lead these conversations within their workplace. And it's just an easy, I don't want to say easy, but it's a great way to have that transfer of skills for folks so they can really be engaged and get that information. Because I know people really want to be able to model behavior as best as possible and see it in real time as best as they can. Because I know for me, there are times I'm definitely worried when I'm in a workshop that someone's going to say something and I'm going to maybe not have the correct way to address it. And then the workshop's going to go off the rails. So being able to see other people manage those sticky points has been really helpful for me. So I try to bring that into it. Also, storytelling is something I'm really compassionate about. So bringing my own stories and own kind of trials and tribulations of facilitating to the table, along with community building. I wouldn't be here without community. I think a lot of us feel that way within the work. And so I think that that's another thing I also bring to this.
Plus one, Kaya's love language is transparency, and I really appreciate facilitating with Kaya around these topics because of the transparency. And one of my love languages is awkwardness and like being who you are. And like you saw my cat walk across, that's Ernie. He says hello. Like I am who I am, and this is the way I show up. And one of the pieces of that is transparency and also vulnerability. And I think that's a piece of storytelling, right? So using ourselves, like Kaya said, as an example. And I think that's, I wouldn't call that my philosophy, but my approach, because especially as a white woman, I have messed up. And it's weird to have a white woman facilitator for some folks, but like, can I be open and honest and transparent and vulnerable when it comes to my identities? Absolutely. And that's for me a way to show up in my own style and approach, and to also be flexible. Like, yes, we have content and we have the things we need to get done, but where is the energy? Where are we going? Where are we feeling like we need to go in that moment? Why should folks trust us is a great question. We have so much passion between the two of us about this program. And I think that we want to be on the journey. It's not about the destination. It's about the journey. And we want folks to be on that journey with us. So we can all, in our own unique ways, try to create a more equitable world. And I think that's going to be a journey, right? It's a marathon, not a sprint. And that's why I love this program, because it's another piece of that pie.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautifully said. So you'll get a chance to hear more from Kaya and Dr. Victoria as they go through the curriculum, but I want to switch gears now to really start thinking about what exactly is this program, right? They're saying a lot of great things, but like, what exactly are we doing? So let me go ahead and start sharing my screen again. And Dr. V and folks, if you want to unspotlight yourself, you can do so, but I think we should be good. Folks can see the screen all right? Awesome.
Yes.
All righty. So with our program, you might be wondering, all right, this sounds great. Instructors, I'm loving their vibe. Keep us pushing. And it's really this question of like, why this program and who is it for? So first, if you're like, is this for me? What we often say is, as facilitators, as folks who've been doing this work for a while, we know the pain, we know the struggle. I personally been facilitating over a decade now. And part of creating this curriculum for me was asking myself, what are the things that I needed in the beginning, in the middle, and where I'm at now, right? What are some of those skills and practices that might be important for folks? But also, where was I struggling and what did I need when I was struggling? So this is for you if you want to support your colleagues, right? But you're like, I don't know where to start. I don't know how to facilitate. This program is for you if you want to discuss some complex DEI related issues, but every time you try talking about it, maybe there's some friction and some tension, maybe there's some triggers, and it's hard for you to move forward. Also, if you want to begin or continue facilitating some of your internal programs or workshops and you want some facilitation skills, this is for you. It's also for you if you're just ready to leverage privilege and power. You're like, I've never really facilitated before, but I understand what diversity, equity, and inclusion means. I get it. Now I want to use what I have to create that change. So if you are any of the above, welcome again to the space, right? And what will be the benefit for you, specifically the type of person, right? And so after running this program multiple times, what we found is that folks who benefit the most from this are one, folks who are aspiring or entry-level DEI facilitators. So again, you already have a baseline of what diversity, equity, and inclusion is, and you're just trying to up your skills, right? You might also be a human resource lead. So you're in the Department of Human Resources and you already talk to folks, but maybe diversity, equity, inclusion is something that you're still working on and strengthening. Or you're a manager and individual contributor. So it's like maybe you're not necessarily in a formal space to facilitate conversation, but conversations keep coming up, right? You're like, maybe I want to start an ERG, which stands for Employee Resource Group, which is a fancier business name for affinity groups, right? So maybe you might have at your company sort of like woman at fill in the blank of the name of your company, right? And you're really working to discuss what does it mean to create more inclusivity in your workplace. And so this would probably be a really great program for you if you find yourself on any of this list. And what you'll get at the end of this, right? Our goal, and honestly, with how many times we've run this program, people get so much more than what's listed here as bullet points, but this is like guaranteed, right? Like this is us creating the curriculum to make sure that you're all set to first confidently explain what diversity, equity, and inclusion mean and like what your role is in discussing those topics. And then two, to recognize and describe what it means to hold space for yourself and others. And in the next few minutes, we're going to talk about what exactly that's going to look like for the sessions that you'll be going through. Also, to not only just recall, but also practice. What we find is that sometimes in certain programs, we only focus on theory and there's not enough balance with practice, right? And so we want to move folks from just knowledge and awareness to actually working those skills. Doesn't mean it's going to be always comfortable, right? But if you are trying to build that facilitation muscle in the DEI space, that's something we'll work on. And then towards the end, you'll have an opportunity to think about accountability, right? You'll be working with folks over 5 weeks. Hopefully you would have built some relationships and now you're thinking, what does accountability look like when I go back to my workplace? What are some things that I can bring back? But also, how can we continue this conversation? And we've mentioned Mighty Networks. I'm going to mention it again, because towards the end, we'll share some more exciting news about how we hope to continue building community in this way. All right. So what are you going to get? A whole bunch of good stuff, okay? The first two things is all of the sessions will be live. We will be using Zoom as the main platform. You'll get toolkits, right? And so your toolkits are basically sort of identical to what you'll be learning on the slides that we share, but it's something that you get to keep, right? So if you go back to your workplace and you're like, wow, session 2 was so great, I want to be able to do this work. How do I do it? You'll have those resources with you. We also share with you some resources and research that maybe after this program, you might want to take some of those resources and go back to your company or go back to your colleagues and continue these conversations. Just a note on the recordings, we try our best to record each session just so folks have an opportunity to watch it, but we take it down after 48 hours to honor confidentiality. The community piece we've mentioned through Mighty Networks is beyond just having your own affinity space in a group, which will have your own dedicated space with your cohort. You'll also have access to other affinity spaces, to all of our events and webinars. If you are looking for SHRM credits, that's something that's available. So if you have questions about that, feel free to stick to the end. And then you get a certificate of completion, right? And we know that the work is not the workshop and this is not a check the box off program, but the reason why the certification is important is because if you wanted to share with your colleagues, right, or if you wanted to share with your networks on LinkedIn, that's a way to continue this conversation beyond the program. And then in between sessions, you'll have post-session interactions. So via Mighty Networks, you will be able to communicate with the facilitators, folks that are in your cohort, and other people that are just in our community, right? So there's a lot there for you as you go through this program. All right, so I'm not going to spend too much time on this slide because I know Dr. V and Kai are going to quickly go through each of these sessions. But again, just want to iterate the fact that folks will be meeting once a week for 5 weeks, and we'll be tackling each of these topics. So I'm going to have both Dr. V and Kaya sort of talk about what are folks going to expect for each of these sessions.
Yeah, so in session 1, we'll get together, get the party started, and we'll talk through some foundations of DEI facilitation. So really your role as a facilitator of these topics. Facilitation in the DEI space, what does that mean? How do you hold space? How do you make space? Things of that nature. And some key considerations for effective facilitation. So some skills, some things to consider about yourself and your participants, along with just some foundational terms and terminology that we'll go through that are kind of key components to holding these conversations.
So then in session 2, recognizing, addressing, and leveraging power and privilege, this is where we're going to go deeper on those DEI related conversations. In order for you to be an effective leader of these types of discussions, it's really important for you to understand where you hold power and privilege, right? And where you don't, and ways in which you can leverage one or both of these in the workplace. So we'll go over some key terminology, we'll talk about some concepts, and we'll start to build that facilitation muscle through some scenario practice. Some of the topics that we're going to cover are key terminology, leveraging power and privilege, and we'll do those practice scenarios.
Session 3 is actually one of my favorites. So holding space for yourself and others is just such a big part of facilitating. So we'll talk through what that looks like for yourself. Maybe it's during some heavy current events that are going on. So how are you holding space for yourself and your participants through that? So physical, emotional, and sociological safety. What does that look like in this space? What are some tips and tricks for you? What works at your organizations? Maybe what Victoria and I have used in the past, things of that nature. Supporting yourself and colleagues during difficult moments. So I really love co-facilitating. So I think that's one way that we model that through this session in particular, is how to lean on folks, maybe build a community within your organization that can help you through these conversations. And then some frameworks and methods that I think are really important when framing how to hold space, again, for yourself and others.
So then in session 4, it's all about practice and skill building, right? So in this particular session, we're going to go just beyond those scenarios, and we're going to really think through and practice facilitation through talking, group coaching, maybe practicing a couple of different ways you could show up in facilitating. Instead of just answering the quote, how would you respond to a particular scenario, we really want you to have some tangible, actual ways to practice. And that's one of the most important pieces, right? Having those back pocket things you can pull out and be ready to ask or do. Practice facilitation is going to better enable us to prepare for those future scenarios, right? And through that, we will do it through group coaching and breakout rooms. Through these activities, we're hoping to reduce that gap between thinking and doing, right? So it's like, okay, I know how to do it here, but how do I actually do it? Well, some of the key topics or key things you'll get out of that session are peer-to-peer feedback, knowledge gathering and sharing, as well as that group coaching.
Then our final session together, 5 sessions are going to go by so quickly, we'll be very sad at the end, is practicing accountability in a holistic manner. So a lot of what we heard last year was, how can I be accountable to my participants, and how can my participants be accountable to me? And so we're going to talk a lot about that in this session. So what does being accountable look like, being a topic? So how can you be accountable maybe to your co-facilitator, to those participants? What does being called in or called out look like in that space? How do you hold that space for folks? How do you kind of move through that stickiness of having to address something in a workshop or facilitation? What does self-communal and structural care look like? So how are you caring for yourself in those moments? What does communal care look like for you and your participants when having these discussions? And what does structural care look like at your organization to host these conversations and to continue to move the needle forward? and then some action and commitment plan. Because again, the work is not the workshop. What are we doing beyond that? What are some resources we can give you? How can Dr. V and I and the community help you get some of this stuff done and be accountable again to each other? So we talk a lot about not only how can you be accountable to yourself, but how can this community help you be accountable? And what does the next maybe 3 weeks look like, month look like? What are some things you're going to do for action planning and commitment planning as we move forward?
Awesome. Thank you all so much for going through that. And one of the things that we often talk about, especially for the last cohort, and when we were talking about what you'll get, all of what both Kaya and Dr. V mentioned, you will get what we like to call like this magical PDF that you'll take with you, right? Where it's like, okay, I'm not going to go through each toolkit. I just need something to sort of ground me. Maybe it's like this magic sheet or document that you just keep online, or if you're working in the office that you love. And that's where everything that they're talking about, you will have like right at your fingertips, right? So whether you're thinking about certain scenarios that you want to respond to, there are some prompts that we've already created and some almost scripted language to support you, right? If you're thinking about asking questions or you're being curious and you're like, okay, this is happening, there's defensiveness, for example, or there's something else happening, how might I respond? All of that is something that you also get at the end of the program. Yes, you love the strategies PDF. Awesome. Amazing. All right. So I'm gonna pass it back over to Dr. V if you wanted to talk a little bit about this other testimonial and give some texture to what this experience was like for you.
Sure. So this session really enforced that it's not about solving these massive cultural challenges like racism. Instead, it's about creating space for us all to recognize the impact of racism, heterosexism, sexism, etc., on our daily lives and in our daily work lives. Naming it and working hard to reduce its negative personal impact wherever possible within our company culture for the people we work with is a much better way to be an ally, says this summer participant. And this speaks to me because for me, it's both and. It's the dismantling the system while also dismantling the self. We really have to look at ourselves and how are we colluding or perpetuating these systems within ourselves, right? Our internalized sexism or homophobia or racism or whatever. And how are we interacting with others? So for me, the system shows up in the self shows up in the system. And this talks about the very real nature of it's the both and. You have to create these environments of acknowledging intent and impact for each other. We have to think broadly and in the micro sense, right? It's not just about all of the larger systems. It's about our daily interactions, and those have very real impact. And how do we show up for each other? We talk a bit about systems and how do we do that? And how do we carry both and it doesn't have to be this huge weight, right? It can be something that we get to do. We get to have these conversations. Kaya, is there anything else from this quote you want to say, pick out?
I just +1 to everything you said. I think naming it is just so important in this work, and that's something that we try to model for everyone.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you all so much. So we have a little bit over 10 minutes and we're going to start switching gears for Q&A. So I know Akiana will be leading us in that. So pass the mic over to you.
Yeah, so thank you, Fatima, Dr. V, and Kaya for giving such a holistic overview of what you all can expect on the content side of the program. I know that there might be some questions about the investment that you all will make when doing this program. So regular registration is currently open. It ends on October 7th, and our regular registration rate is $2,500. And after October 7th, so on October 8th, our last opportunity registration will open, and that's when prices are going to increase to $3,000, and that will end on October 11th. And I just want to make sure that you all really understand the full scope of what you're getting when you're investing in the Leading DEI Conversations program. As Dr. V and Kaya mentioned, you're going to get those 5-week sessions, those 2-hour sessions when you're really going to be able to get into the meat of the content, in the facilitating, in the learning, and in the connection piece. As we've mentioned ad nauseum at this point, you also have our Mighty Networks community. And as Fatima mentioned, you're going to have a dedicated space within Mighty Networks, which means that's going to be your page where you're going to have access to all of the program resources, articles, blog posts, Dr. V's extensive book collection. You're going to get access to all of that. But not only that, you're going to be able to continue the great conversations that you have in your Zoom sessions within the activity feeds on Mighty Networks. Mighty Networks functions very similar to a social media. So you'll be able to DM participants, you'll be able to chat within your own space, you'll be able to share comments. The conversations will be able to continue after the program or after the sessions. And then once you're done with the Leading DEI Conversations program, you'll be welcomed into the DEI practitioner space within our Mighty Network. So you'll be able to keep connecting with either alumni of previous Leading DEI Conversation cohorts or other DEI practitioners and facilitators who are doing the same work that you all are. And I don't want y'all, in case some of you all may not have necessarily DEI roles in your companies, I don't want that to dismay you. This space is for those who are committed to doing the work like we've mentioned. However, we do want to be very realistic that there are just some factors outside of y'all's control in paying for this program. So we have a couple resources that I'd love to share with you all. This first document that I'm sharing, this is our Convince Your Boss email template. So this is a template that you can copy and paste for yourself, edit as you see fit, and send to your managers on why they should invest in you in participating in this program. It'll give you some key facts and some great things that you'll be able to take away. And hopefully after this info session, you'll have a little bit more info to be able to share with your managers to hopefully get them to help you with this program. And if for some reason that doesn't work out, we also do have a financial assistance form that I've linked here. This is a form that will just go straight to our team, so no one else will look at it. And you can just explain your situation, if you are able to pay something, what that amount will be, and then our team will take a look at that and be in contact with you. So just wanted to make sure that you all had an overview over the investment. So we've given you a really broad overview of the program. Yes, as Fatima said, we will be sending out these forms electronically as well. So if you haven't had a chance to grab them now, you'll definitely get access to them afterwards. But we did have some questions come through in our Eventbrite, but we want to give precedent to those of us on the call. Any questions that we can answer for you all, any comments that you all have, please feel free to unmute yourself or put them in the chat.
Hi, can I ask a question?
Of course.
Hey, so I was wondering, for the time period, I see that it's you meet on Thursdays at a specific time, and will those times ever change for future offerings? Like, just personally speaking, I couldn't do that because of team meetings that I have every week at that time. So is it always on Thursdays at that time, every time you offer this, or does that ever change?
Yeah, so I can take lead on this, y'all. So no, the time and the day won't always be the same. We kind of just base it off of team availability, and we really like to collect feedback from you all on what days and times would work best. So if you know that this time wouldn't work best, but you have some ideas of days and times that would work, definitely reach out to me. I'll throw my email in the chat for you. I'd love to have a larger conversation about timing of programs and things of that nature.
Thank you.
Of course. So I'll go ahead while people are still thinking about any questions that they might have. I'll go ahead and ask a question that came from our Eventbrite. So someone asked, are there scholarships available? Fatima, you want to answer that for us?
Absolutely. I literally was finding my mute button like, yeah. So as Akiana said, we we do diversity, equity, inclusion work. So we get it, right? And I love the resources that you all have in the chat. And again, we'll send it via follow-up email if you're watching the recording. But if you are unable to get support from your company or organization, once you complete that financial assistance form, we'll get back to you at least 2 weeks before the program starts, so you'll know whether or not you'll be able to attend. We try our best to make sure that everyone that does apply has an equal chance to be part of the program. Last cohort, we had so many amazing people who were like, hey, I really want to do this program, but I can only offer fill in the blank, right? And really helping us understand how this program will support them so we can at least make sure that it's a great fit. So if you go to that financial form link that Akiana shared, that's the best way to get that support.
Great. Thank you, Fatima. So is there a nonprofit discount? We had someone on the Eventbrite ask if there was a nonprofit discount.
We're all looking at our amazing co-CEO if you want to take lead on that question, but if not, I'm happy to kick things off, Rachel.
Hi. Surprise. Here I am. Yeah. So we don't offer specifically nonprofit discounts, but we do offer financial support for those who need it. Nonprofits are very different. Some are very, some pay very well and some others don't. So we don't just blanket it based on corporation type. But if you do have a need, we do have that support form. So that is my contribution to this conversation. Anything else I forgot?
No, well, yeah, I was gonna say really quickly, sorry, Akiana, just to jump in really quickly because it beautifully ties in to that next question, Akiana, around the people, if you wanted to ask it.
Yeah, so someone on the Eventbrite also asked that I'm also interested in finding out if an organization has a group of participants, if a cohort could be offered at a group price. I'm thinking 15 to 20 people from the same organization.
That is also me. Yes, if you would like to bring this into your company or organization, you talk to me. I can put my email address right in here as well. I will do that right now, rachel@shegeeksout.com. We absolutely do offer this as an internal program for companies and organizations and teams to learn together as well.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Rachel. And to add to what Rachel said, if you go to our Eventbrite link or even our website where we talk about this program in our FAQs, if you're wondering like, why can't we all just be in this one cohort? Because this is such an intimate conversation, we're really trying our best to create a space where we're accepting 2 to 3 folks from a company, right? But anything more than that really might impact the nature of the program because you're having so many people from different organizations. So if you find that you have more than 2 people at your organization who might be interested in this, we could do a more smaller internal session for you all, whether that's 3 people, 7 people, 50 people, whatever it is. But it's better that way because we can really then begin to think about what are some of the structures and systems that you have within your organization to really help you lead these conversations specifically within your company.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Fatima and Rachel. So someone else asks, I would like to learn a bit more if this training goes beyond just facilitation and if the participants are in any way prepared to develop content for facilitation.
Yes, great question. So like we said before, the training goes beyond just facilitation, right? So we're talking about main concepts related to diversity, equity, and inclusion. We're talking about oppression. We're talking about privilege. We're talking about power. We're talking about systems and structures, right? So it's not just learning how to facilitate, but part of this is also learning more about yourself, right? I sometimes joke around and say we're giving people like 2-in-1 programs, right? The last time I did this workshop with another client, they were like, this felt like work therapy. And sometimes it does because people are really thinking about, oh my goodness, like I didn't know this was a trigger for me. I'm so glad I took this session because now I have something in place where if I am overwhelmed, if I am burnt out, I'm not going to wait to get to that point I'm going to figure out who do I tap or who do I connect with. But the piece around developing content for facilitation. So if you are looking for us to come in and not just training on how to lead DEI conversations, but you want us to also do sort of like a train the trainer where we offer some of our proprietary content and help you use that and do that facilitation internally. That is something that we do. Again, contact us, or Rachel will be the person. We'll send all this via follow-up email. But yes, that's something that we can do to support you and your company and whoever's doing this program to facilitate within the company, right? So sometimes in the past, we've worked with people where they would like us to help them facilitate our unconscious bias workshop, for example. So we go through this program, we give them the content, the slides, everything as if they were us, and then we literally have them facilitate the program for us, and then we give feedback.
Awesome. Thanks, Fatima. Someone asks, your program overview was helpful. I'd love to learn more about how participants will practice these skills in real time and receive feedback. Who is this program for exactly? All levels, knowledge, etc. Who will benefit the most?
I can take this one. I love this question. So a lot of what Dr. V and I do when it comes to providing feedback and things of that nature is like asking questions of the participants when it comes to our own facilitation, and then we'll make live adjustments or address things, naming things again, like I said, that we love to do in the moment and modeling that behavior. And we're also taking time to, in activities, have folks talk through some of these scenarios, whether it be different activities and different ways of facilitating some of these concepts, and being able to have some conversations around maybe what worked or what didn't work in terms of feedback for participants in that way. And that's a new addition that we're doing this cohort, which I'm really excited about to see how it works for folks. And a lot of people will just ask questions around, say, hey, this happened when I tried to address this racist thing that happened at work. This is what I did, but what would people do differently? And we'll have a conversation like that. So there's definitely structure for it within our activities to address things and have people practice and things of that nature. And then there's also live time, like question asking in ways that Victoria and I will talk through some different scenarios and also give our own resources or tips or tricks there. And then in terms of some of the other questions within that question, who is this for? I think Ankiana, you said this earlier, like anyone who wants to be like leading these conversations within their workplace and wants to address some of these things. I think this is a great spot for folks. People do come in at different levels depending on their role at their organization. So we do a lot of foundational knowledge coverage in the beginning 2 sessions. So knowing that coming in that there'll be a refresher for some folks and it might be new for some other folks, but we do a great job of having participants again ask questions and learn from one another. It's not just Dr. V and I like talking at people. We love making it interactive and making sure that people are learning from each other when it comes to these topics. And I think anyone who wants to do this work would benefit most from it, and who is going to lead these conversations within their workplace and wants to bring that change within their workplace. I think those are the people who'd benefit the most from it.
Great. Thanks, Kaya. And I also didn't mention, but you'll be able to see it when you go to the Eventbrite link. We have our online course available as an add-on for $99 as an addition to this program. So you might not be able to finish the full course prior to the program launch, but that is an offering for you all. So if you all wanted to take a peek in that unconscious bias course on our Mighty Networks, you'll have the ability to do that alongside the program as well. So that kind of might help folks who have questions about knowledge base being had. Another question that we had was, oh, did I see a question in the chat?
Yeah, it's probably worth mentioning out loud just in case people are watching the recording. So if you want to ask it out loud and read the response, totally fine.
Cool. So we had a question in the chat. If you have to miss a live session, would you say it's better to wait for the next offering? And Fatima answered, thanks for your question. We recognize that people might miss at least one session because life happens. If you'll be missing one of the sessions, you'll have an opportunity to watch the recording before the next session. If you think you'll miss more than one session, then we invite you to sign up another time. And yes, definitely want to highlight that answer for sure. Yeah. So another question, how can I encourage my colleagues to feel comfortable calling me in to make my language and actions more inclusive?
I can take this one again. I think all of this is conversations. So being able to really set some ground rules or community agreements with your team and colleagues around this discussion, and what feels good for you when it comes to calling in. I know for me personally, and something I say in my facilitation is, depending on the context, I like having that conversation like privately, not like if I were to say something in the middle of this like session, I wouldn't want Dr. V to be like, hey, Kaya, you said this really messed up thing. But if we're in a workshop together and it was a ableist term or something, I may have had that conversation with her already and want her to actually call me in that moment to be able to model that behavior. But if we're in a team meeting, that might feel a little bit different. So I think context definitely matters, but you have to have those conversations with your colleagues around maybe what your love language is, affirmations, how do you like to receive feedback? I like feedback in the form of a sandwich, so I don't have anxiety about people hating me, right? So those sorts of things are really important when having these discussions, and being able to model that behavior and show that you're able to be called in while also calling people in, I think is really important, because if only one person is doing the calling in or only one person is being called in, it really leads to sticky dynamics, which aren't great. And that's something that, again, Dr. V and I model a lot within our facilitations. You'll see that in real time, and we'll talk through it and things that have worked or not worked for us too.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Kaya. So I know that we're right at the hour, so I don't want to take too much of you all's time, but really just want to thank y'all so much for being here and present on this info session. And for those of you who are going to be listening or watching to this recording, thank you so much for learning more about leading DEI conversations. We'll be sure to follow up with all of our contact information, but again, our Mighty Networks platform is going to be the best place for you all to kind of get some info right off the jump. Sneak peek, you actually don't need to necessarily be a part of a program to connect with us on Mighty Networks. So you all can join us right now. You can start taking a peek at the different affinity spaces that we have. You can start getting to know all of our community members. And that's where we're going to be sharing blog posts, questions, answers from the facilitators. We have moderators for each space, so definitely stay connected with us on that space. And yeah, thank you all so much for joining us this evening. I hope to see some of you registered for Leading DEI Conversations.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you
so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.